Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Bang, bang. I have a gavel. It's imaginary.
Her mic
My
is
mic is
on.
on. Yes, it is.
It's just a.
Good afternoon. I'm going to call to order the October 18th, 2017 regular meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Education. I am welcoming all today on a bright, beautiful Wednesday, and I'll ask that you please silence your cell phones and your electronic devices. Please join me for the pledge.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Present.
Ms. Bolton?
Present.
Mrs. Hoffman? Present. Ms. Jones? Here. Mr. Manera? Here. President Copeland-Dansby?
I am present. I need a motion to approve the minutes from two meetings, a special meeting October 9th, 2017, and a regular board meeting October 9th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved as presented. Ms. Bolton, Chair of the Student Achievement Committee, please present the October 4th, 2017 committee meeting report.
Thank you, Madam President. I certainly will. We had another fruitful and meaningful meeting as we move into the new administration and keep a pace of their fast pace. We talked in terms of the implementation of this positive school culture. Got more information about the iCare app. Also, I think Assistant Superintendent Bunty kind of told us that the equity plan, equity policy is in action as we are hiring social workers. Also, the training has been approved by the superintendent regarding cultural competency for our staff and our teachers. We heard from Dr. Brown from Taft Elementary about a wonderful program that's a priority of the superintendent, which was going to allow our kindergartners at Taft to leverage the assets, if you will, of the recreation department and CPS, and hopefully it's a program that will be expanding and that the children there at the kindergarten grade at Taft are now taking swimming lessons, and it's something that we want many of our children to do because it's now a service that is not necessarily offered throughout the city, and so this is something that the superintendent's very interested in, and Dr. Brown was effusive about the opportunities and also glad to be leading it. We had an update from Yanetta Harper regarding the schedule, regarding teacher evaluation, just to be clear about how often that occurs for every staff member. And then also an issue, part of teacher evaluation that was of interest is this issue of shared attribution with the board and others. We'll be hearing more and more about as we move through and we leave safe harbor and student growth and achievement begins to be more of an emphasis and count more. We also began to do what we want to do for a number of months now, which is focus on our high schools. So we had an open discussion, if you will, about those things that can impact the success of our and growth of our high schools. And we also, with Kleenexes and tissues at hand, talked at length about Mr. Nelms' legacy, and we focused this time last month on his athletic interests, which of course, as the AD told us, was been preyed on regarding softball and baseball, and then also the Athletic Hall of Fame to continue its efforts. Next time we'll be talking more about a couple of other major legacy items for Member Nelms, which were character education and, of course, the MORE program. So a great meeting, and thank you for allowing me to submit.
Do board members have any questions or comments?
I want to emphasize that as we focus on positive school culture at our Student Achievement Committee, we definitely need to continue to drive the focus on bringing parents into our school. They're a vital component of continuing our positive school culture, going an upward trend. So it was talked about at the meeting. I just want to highlight that we as a committee are aware that that is a vital component, and we're encouraging the administration to look for all means and ways to continue to engage our parents.
Mrs. Hoffman, as Chair of the Ad Hoc Priorities Committee, please present the October 6th committee meeting report.
Sure. So Ad Hoc met to discuss our fall board retreat. As had been suggested by some other board members, according to our calendar, we're supposed to have that retreat in October. Some other board members brought up, why don't we do it in November this year, since it's an election year and we can have any new board members join us for that. And so that is what we're coming back, as you can see in the notes, and proposing to the board that we do. So Phyllis will follow up and send some potential dates out to us. As you can see in the notes, we discussed a potential plan for the retreat, what we would cover. So let us know if you have any feedback on that. Otherwise, we will move forward with planning a November retreat covering the bullets that we had agreed to when we approved our ad hoc calendar.
Excellent. Do board members have any comments or questions? I have a question. Will we have the retreat on-site or off-site?
Whatever the board wants. You know, we have not discussed
I'm
location.
going to ask that we do it off-site, and I can, yeah, we
All
can
right.
maybe talk about that later. I
Okay.
think it'll be more fun. Don't you guys think that'll be more fun?
You mean like Hawaii?
Like Hawaii.
Hawaii.
Absolutely. Hoffman. Ms. Jones, as Chair of Policy Committee, please present the October 9th committee meeting report.
Yes, thank you. As you will note, there is one item on our agenda, and it was that important that we decided to give attention to that. And I am going to defer to Board Member Hoffman, who is leading this initiative, to kind of summarize the activity for that day.
Sure. So it was really exciting, very fun. We had about 40 students, representatives from all of our high schools with us to continue this conversation. So as we all know, we've been working with students on this idea of how do we get more student voice in board decision making so that we can talk directly with students and students can talk directly with us, since the decisions we make most directly impact our students. And so we had met with a group of students. They had done a bunch of brainstorming around the questions that you see here, and then they came to policy committee to present what their group had discussed. And it was, and to give each other the opportunity, so there were 4 groups, so groups could ask each other questions about the ideas they had come up with. It was a wonderful discussion. The students led the whole discussion. We sat there just to listen to what their ideas were.
Nice.
And then by the end, we found that there were several themes that came out of the conversations, but also lots of unique differences based on different school size, different school cultures, how things work at their schools. So you can see in the notes what some of those takeaways were. As far as the policy committee, you can see our next steps are to convene another meeting with the students to kind of go from these big picture ideas down to the nitty-gritty of how a program like this would work, and also to move forward with institutionalizing this idea by putting it into policy so that it's not just an initiative that can go by the wayside if and when this board changes, but once it becomes policy, then it will be something that has a lasting hold here in CPS. So those are our 2 next steps, but it was really exciting. I think it confirmed for us once again, if you have a problem, let's just gather a group of kids and they'll solve anything.
Just to add, and then I'll be done. I think what was very interesting about this is that these young people were very genuine, and they told it like it is and was and will be. And so we appreciated that level of conversation that they shared with us and with each other. So thank you, Ms. Hoffman. I submit the minutes as written.
Thank you. Do board members have any questions or comments? Well, I want to thank you guys for including the voice of the student. I think it's amazing. Thank you. We need a voice vote to accept the committee meeting reports as written. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you. Moving forward, I would like to present a resolution for board consideration. This is a resolution to fill a board of education vacancy, and I will read this. Whereas a vacancy has been caused on this Board of Education by reason of death of board member Chris Nelms, effective September 19th, 2017. And whereas this Board of Education has by law authority to fill a vacancy for the unexpired term thereof. Now, therefore, be it resolved by a majority vote of all of the remaining members of the Board of Education of the Cincinnati Public School District, that Lannis J. Timmons be and hereby is appointed to serve as a member of the Board of Education to this school district for the unexpired term of October 2017, ending on December 31st, 2019. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion or comments? Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Hoffman?
Aye.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Manera?
Aye.
President Copeland Dansby?
Yes. At this time, we would like to welcome our new board member. Congratulations, Mr. Timmons. So we want to get Mr. Timmons to work right away, so we are going to do an oath in office for him and sworn in by our treasurer, Ms. Jennifer Wagner.
Here's a copy for you to follow along.
All
It's
right.
a little bit easier. Okay, Mr. Timmons, if you'll raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, Lannis J. Timmons,
I, Lannis J. Timmons,
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
and that I will be faithfully, honestly, and impartially
and that I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially discharge the duties of a board member
of the Board of Education
of the Board of Education
of the Cincinnati City
of the Cincinnati City
School District of Cincinnati, Ohio,
School District of Cincinnati, Ohio,
during my continuance in office.
during my continuance in office.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir, have a seat. And let's get busy. Just so that the public knows, Mr. Timmons will also be sworn in at a formal setting at the board's October 23rd, 2017 regular meeting so that he can share this moment more with his family and his friends. Do board members have any comments?
Just want to welcome you to the board, and can we get this man a packet of information so we can?
Ms.
Thank
Ms.
you,
Bolton?
Dan. Thank you.
Second that, a welcoming to you, and also a feel-good moment from a standpoint that we had 25 great citizens of the district apply for this seat, and it was a difficult decision for all of us, and yet I think we came up with a very great unanimous decision for the future and the remainder of Mr. Nelms and now Mr. Timmons' seat.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, so similarly, welcome. We're so glad you're with us. We found it so exciting and interesting as a board. We discussed about each of the people we interviewed, took the same questions and answered them in some similar ways, in some very different ways, but every person with such passion for our kids and our community and for the role of the board member. So it was a very difficult decision, but we are so grateful that you want to do this work and want to join us, and we're so impressed with your decades-long commitment to our kids and our community. And so we are just so grateful that you want to spend your time working in this capacity, in addition to all you've already done for our kids.
All right, thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Bates?
Yes, and I too want to welcome you, Mr. Timmons. And during your interview, I just found you so very interesting that I selfishly wanted you on the board so I could learn more from you. So, so I look forward to that opportunity and working with you and learning from you.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to working with you all too.
Ms. Jones?
Yes, just a personal welcome. Looking forward to working with you in all aspects of the board, and particularly, hopefully, the policy committee, where Chris served, and we'll be talking more about that. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So welcome, welcome, welcome. I think you've got your welcome, Mr. Timmons, from all of your now new colleagues. And I would just like to publicly say I'm happy to support anything that you need with your onboarding and getting you up to speed so that you feel comfortable.
Right.
And of course, we're all very impressed with your history of working with children and that. So we are really looking forward to your voice. So
Thank you.
welcome. So just relax, sit back, just.
I would also add, the first thing of business is going to be the 5-year forecast, but don't
Oh,
leave.
he's got one before that.
Don't leave. Because after that, nothing personal, treasurer.
Yeah, no, he's got a couple other things before we get to the 5-year forecast. So your first official piece of business will be now. Before we do that, though, I do want to mention to the public that we are glad to be in this room now for our Wednesday meetings, and we are being live streamed to the public right now. Mr. Manera, would you please present the resolution for board consideration?
It'll be an honor. I'm presenting a resolution approving student eligible for subsidy reimbursement in lieu of transportation. This is something that we continually need to do in order to provide those subsidies for families that are upfronting the money for their students to get to school. So I present it as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Miss Jones, I'm sorry.
And I answered aye. Aye.
I am so sorry.
That's
Mr. Manera? Aye. Mr. Timmons?
Yes.
I was
That's my
thinking
first
ahead
one.
when
That's
I,
my first time.
There you go.
Thank you, Phyllis.
President Copeland Dansby.
Aye. Thank you. So we have 2 presentations this afternoon, and our first presentation will begin with a surprise for one of our board members. And so I'm going to ask Ms. Sarah Clark, who's the Director of Legal Services, to join us.
Thank you.
All we need.
Thank you, Ms. President, and the board for allowing me to be present this morning. My name is Sarah Clark. I'm the Director of Legal Services at OSBA, and I will introduce my colleague here in a second. OSBA's mission is to serve Ohio's public school board members and the diverse districts they represent. As a member-driven association, our work would not be accomplished without the work of dedicated members who serve as leaders of the organization. We realize that being a school board member at times can be a full-time position, and taking on the additional responsibility of serving at the state level is a significant additional commitment. I'm here this morning to recognize and thank one of the valued leaders of the association, and she doesn't know why, but Melanie Bates, for her service as a member of OSBA's 2017 Board of Trustees. Not only does Melanie lead the association as a trustee, but she also serves as a member of the association's Urban School District Advisory Network and Southwest Region Executive Committee. So we have a plaque. And it says, Melanie Bates is hereby recognized by the Ohio School Boards Association for outstanding service as a member of the OSBA Board of Trustees, 2017. So I'd like to present it.
So for those of you who don't know, Ms. Bates loves surprises, and I wanted this to be very special for you.
Oh, thank you.
And so we kept it very hush-hush.
But wait, there's more.
Yay.
We also have a plaque expressing our thanks to the entire Cincinnati City School Board. We recognize that successful state leaders come from successful and supportive school boards, and we thank you for your support of Ms. Bates and for sharing her with OSBA as she works on behalf of school boards at the state level. So we have a plaque for the school board as well that says, the Ohio School Boards Association recognizes the Cincinnati City's Board of Education for its support and encouragement to Melanie Bates as a member of the OSBA Board of Trustees.
Nice.
So I'd like to present this.
I'll be happy to take that from
And then I'd like to invite Ron Diver, who serves as OSBA's Southwest Region Manager, who has a few words he'd like to make as well.
I've only got a couple of things to say. Number one, I didn't expect to be able to meet the brand new board member, but I was able to go to Chris Nelms's visitation to express my sympathies to his family, his wife and dad and son, and from all of us at OSBA, why we certainly extend our sympathies. We also wish your new board member the best. In November, the Capitol Conference takes place, so it's up to Eve and everybody on the board to drag him up there and
We've already
show
got him
him
signed up. I'm serious.
show him what being a board member is all about from a state level. So I wish you all the best throughout the years, and hope to see you up at the Capitol Conference. The Region Resource Center, which is the Southwest region, will be there, and we hope you stop by and say hello to some of us. We'll be taking turns from the Region Exec Committee, saying hi to everybody. So thank you very much for letting us come tonight.
Thank you for being here.
This afternoon.
Greatly appreciate it.
It's dark in here. It's not night.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do board members have any comments? Thank you so much. Our final presentation today will be an update on our 5-year forecast. Mrs. Wagner, we are so looking forward to hearing from you this morning.
As I am in presenting it.
Thank you.
Just give me a second here to organize myself. So thank you for the opportunity to present the forecast to you. You know that we do a public presentation today and get some feedback, and then on Monday night we'll ask for approval. I'm required to file the forecast by the end of October with the Ohio Department of Education. So just to remind you and maybe educate the public a little bit in that filing the 5-year forecast is actually a requirement by the Ohio Department of Education. We have to do it twice a year, in October and in May. All 613 school districts in the state of Ohio have to do this, and we have to follow the same format as everybody else. And so what you have before you is very enlarged ones because I have over 50 eyes and I can't read the little print anymore. So I try to blow it up, make it easy for you. But the format is that you share 3 years worth of actual data based on the format that they give you. The next year is the year that we're operating in right now, and that's a budget forecast, and then the future years are just based on assumptions. The purpose of the forecast is so that the state and our public can monitor our solvency, and then it helps us with our financial planning in the future when we need to go for maybe new money or how we're going to fund strategic initiatives that are a couple years, crossing boundaries. So. Okay, so the assumptions that we use is that the fiscal year 17, the year that we just ended in June 30, is our actuals. Good news is we ended up with about $12 million more in cash than we'd originally forecasted in May, and that was for 2 main reasons. The first one being we received a $5 million TIF payment from the city of Cincinnati that we typically don't receive until July, but we received it a month early, so that was good news. And then we also received a small bump up from our state foundation payment. Our EMIS team was able to clean up a lot of the student data that was preventing us from getting funding, and so by the end of the year we got caught up on that, so that's what helped with our forecast. So what that does is because we ended up with a little bit more cash this year, it helped us, and we continue to control our spending, to push off the forecasted deficit actually 1 more year. So in May we thought we would hit a cash deficit in 2020, and now we're projecting it to be in 2021, so that's good. Yay us for managing our money. Also in the forecast is the change in the state foundation formula. Some things took us a little bit by surprise, but we did know that the per pupil was going up a little bit each year, and that was forecasted. We were on a cap. The formula cap was at 7.5%, and in May we were told that they were changing the cap to 5%. Well, in October we're now at a 3% cap, and so what that means is for districts that are increasing enrollment, the formula is capped at 3% of our previous year's revenue, which makes it really hard to forecast because we still don't have last year's finalized. The formula that we're receiving our payments off right now in October is still last year's data. So in October, when we're trying to do our forecast, we don't really know what our final revenue is going to be because they're still adjusting it. So we do the best we can. But that was that change alone from 5% to 3% was about a $2.6 million hit to our revenue that we would have gotten if they'd left us at 5%. The economic disadvantaged reimbursement is flat. You remember several years ago we jumped into the CEP program where every school that was able to has a free and reduced lunch across the whole school. And so it was generating a lot of revenue for the larger school districts, so they've changed it so that we don't get so much revenue from that. So we're just forecasting forward, staying where we are. The transportation reimbursement reduction, we were at 50%. They left us at 37.5%, and then next year it's going down to 25%. Over the 3-year period, it'll cost us about $8 million in reimbursements. So we have to make sure that we are aware of that, and we're continuing to manage our spend. And then also in this forecast, we have the 2% COLA that we agreed to for July 2017 and 2018. And if you recall, the third year of all the bargaining unit contracts is a reopener based on reliable funding. So moving forward, what we've done for fiscal year 18 is in Vision 2020 version 3. Those plans haven't been finalized. They're just now at the beginning planning. So we just estimated that there's going to be 8 schools and that we'll have an additional of 8 FTEs in the general fund. Some of it will be shared in the school-wide pool. So it was kind of the best we could do at this point. Also, in our previous notes, we planned for an additional 7 preschool classrooms to expand next year. So we've added that cost into our salary assumptions. And then just as we move forward, our inflation rate, assumptions on our inflation rates for medical, it's at 5%. Even though it's less than the national average, it's a little bit over 6%. We're managing right around 5%. Our purchase services typically goes up about 3% per year. Utilities at 5%, although that's heavily reliable on how harsh of a winter we have. Supplies and materials about 2%, and then our capital expenditures at 5%. So as you remember, I do a lot of pictures and graphs because there's a lot of data to sink in, and to me it makes more sense when you look at data. What I wanted to point out here, what I'm showing you is where our revenues come from into the general fund. The green portions are our local share, the purple portions are our state share, and what's significant here is the local share is bumped up to 60% of our total revenue in the general fund because of the new money levy, right? So as a percent of our total revenue, it was 55%, it's gone up to 60, and then our state share keeps shrinking. Oh, so let me just explain a little bit. So property taxes is based on the levies and the property and the millage that the voters have approved. Hamilton County collects the money for us and then sends it to us twice a year. Tangible personal property is based on utilities because the tangible personal property tax has been phased out, so this is strictly on the public utilities. And then other local is our pilot payments, the payment in lieu of taxes on our abatement agreements, any tuition that we would collect, or any other kind of fees like that. And then the state foundation is both the formula and the restricted, which is career tech money and economically disadvantaged money. And then other state revenues is the reimbursement for the property tax, changeable personal property is phased out. And that's being reduced as time goes on as well. So this is the data that supports all of that. What I'm doing is comparing the final year end fiscal year 17 to our forecasted 18 in October. So the first 2 lines are a condition of the new levy, right? So we're getting $48 million more in new levy money, and our state monies are going up because our enrollment is going up. Property tax allocation went down a little bit just based on the reimbursement reductions. The other revenues, this is where we had some unexpected payments. So you remember on E-rate, which is the telecommunication tax reimbursement, they were several years behind. Well, last year we collected 3 years of catch-up, and so now we're back to normal collections. And so that's why it looks like a reduction. The advances in is a little bit lower. That's a condition on how much money the general fund had to advance out to federal funds, because we're not allowed to operate in a cash deficit. So anytime, and most of our federal funds are run on a reimbursement basis, so we spend the money and then we ask the federal fund to reimburse us. Well, at the end of the year, we can't let them have a negative balance, so the general fund advances it, and then we turn around in the new year, just return it. And that's just a condition of how much money we had to advance. And the other financing sources, I'm sorry, that was the E-rate money. The money up top is the increase in pilot payments and TIF money. The E-rate is on the other financing sources. And so, sorry if I confused you on the wrong line. So here's an pie chart of our expenditures by object. Object codes are defined by the Ohio Department of Education, and we all use the same general ledger account structure. So if you see that our salaries and benefits only represent 26% of our budget, that's because we participate in the school-wide pool. So a large amount of those monies get transferred into another fund to be paid out of that fund. And I'll show you that breakdown a little bit later. But if you combine our general fund with our school-wide pool, our salaries and fringes are at 60%. Most districts are at 80%. The biggest difference is because we contract out our transportation, so we don't pay our bus drivers. That's under purchase services, not under salaries. This is the biggest difference for us. And so you see in the big orange slice, 37% of our budget is under the transfer. So monies that we transfer out to fund the school-wide pool, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. Monies that we transfer out to our Fund 34, which is our facility maintenance fund, and monies that we transfer out to pay our debt, because the debt is managed out of a different fund, Fund 2. Purchase services represents 34%. I have a pie chart here that breaks the purchase services down as well, because since that's just a significant amount of our budget. So here's the data behind pie chart. Salaries are up for a couple reasons. The COLA increases, the expansion, we've had to hire more staff. And if you recall, in the past in our budget, we used to have a contingency line of $3 million at the beginning of each year. We budget for $3 million because we use that money to manage fluctuations in enrollment. So mid-year, if a classroom goes over their class size limit, we have to hire a teacher. We would take it out, we would move that contingency money into the salary line and then pay that teacher. Well, when you compare October to May, and you start off with the money in the transfer line, and then you put it up in salaries, it looks odd. So what we're doing is we've moved that contingency money into the salary and benefits line so that it's where we actually spend it out. It's just a little bit more consistency. Purchase services are up, mostly because of the CPP payments. You remember, annually we're paying them $7 million in order for the community providers to manage their tuition assistance and their quality improvement grants. Supplies are up by $4.8 million. $2 million of that is more money that we've put in instructional supplies, supporting our classrooms. And the other $2 million is a recoding of the high tower gas purchase. So we used to pay our vendors for the bus service. They bought the gas. We get a sales tax break on that, and so we started buying the gas separately. But when we first converted the contract over, they were still charging it to purchase service instead of a supply. Gas is a supply and not a service. So we've actually moved that $2 million spend into that supply line. Other expenses of 1.9 just represents the increased number of fees the auditor charges us to collect property taxes on the new levy. So here's the second half of the rest of the forecast where we show about the impact on cash. So our expenses are up by $12 million from last year, explained by our expansion plans or strategic initiatives and cost of living increases and CPP. So what that does is we're forecasting an ending cash balance of 2018 of $80 million. Last year in May, we thought that would be about $37 million. So that's the condition of having more cash at the end of the year and then controlling our spending a little bit better. We have better financial systems to do that, and then we're just paying a lot more attention and getting better at forecasting. So we anticipate having unencumbered cash of $67 million at the end of fiscal year 18. So here's an explanation on purchase services, since this represents such a large part of our budget. Tuition, it represents about 65%, if I'm not mistaken, of that. So tuition that we pay to community schools, open enrollment, the voucher, the autism, Peterson Scholarship, and special needs. And so we actually pay about $100 million a year in tuition for our children to go elsewhere. Good news is the community school tuition bill is going down, but that decrease is being offset by increases in the ed choice and the autism. The autism Peterson scholarships are very, very expensive. They can go up to $27,000 per year per child. Transportation represents about 20% of that budget. And we have a new pie over off to the right-hand side of Cincinnati Preschool Promise. It's really part of contracted services, but I'm pulling it out because it's a significant new strategic initiative, and I wanted everybody to see it. The other professional services, the 10%, are technology contractors that are out there, any contractors that we would hire to do things in our schools. And so that portion of the pie is shrinking as we move forward. Here's a pie chart of our supplies. What I wanted to point out here was that 46% is actually into the classroom, and which is an increase over previous years. So we're trying to put more money, every dollar we can save in other things, we put back into the classroom. And then the fuel for vehicles at 19% shows an increase because of that movement of the high tower gas bill of $2 million. So here's the data behind the transfers. So there's 3 major transfers we do every year. We move money into the school-wide pool, and just for those that aren't familiar with that, the government allows us to commingle our funds into a separate pool. It's called a school-wide pool, and it represents the general fund, our Title I, which supports our disadvantaged children, Title IIA, which represents class size and increasing teacher quality. And so we're able to put the money into that pool. It loses its identity once it's in there, so that our schools can use the money much more efficiently to support the students with their needs. Every school has to go through a needs assessment of where their strengths and weaknesses are. So if they show a weakness in 3rd grade math, then they're supposed to use their budgets to help support that weakness to increase it. We've determined over years when we are inside and outside the pool that we tend to leave less money out on the table in the federal funds because we're able to use that money so much more efficiently. Sorry about my voice. Debt. So even though the decrease in debt isn't really that our debt is going down, it's because we are showing the reflection of the IRS subsidy on some of our debt payments. And so that helps us, so we don't have to transfer so much money out of the general fund into the debt fund. And the Fund 34 is a schedule that lasts 20-some years of $3.2 million every year, so that makes it easy to budget for. Here's a graph of that transfer budget. 92% of it represents the school-wide pool, and I'll go into that detail here. Here's a copy of the school-wide pool. So $186 million goes from the general fund into the pool. 8.7 goes from Title I into the pool, and Title I is 9.2. So you can see the percent. So for every dollar that we spend, 95% of that dollar gets charged to the general fund, and then 4% gets charged to the federal Title I budget, and then they reimburse us. And so the total pool is $196 million. The schools that participate in the pool are those that are Title I eligible. And we have, I think, 6 that aren't. So the majority of our schools, children get to take advantage of this. Here's a graph. So of the budget in the school-wide pool, 97% of it is for teachers and principals and school-related personnel that support our students. So here's another copy of the complete forecast of our revenues. And what I want to show you is the bottom dark green section are the state share of revenue. You can see it kind of sort of goes up a little bit and then it kind of goes down a little bit, but it's relatively flat. The lighter green section is our local property taxes. The pink section at the top represents the new money levy. And how much, so the first year we got half a year of collection, and then for the next 4 years we get a full year, and then the last year we only get a half year collection because it expires in December. So property taxes based on a calendar year while we're on a June 30 fiscal year. The blue section is a renewal that we're looking for to approval in November. So you can see that's the risk that if it doesn't pass, that's how much it's going to hit our revenue. And then we have another renewal coming up in 2021. It's a $66 million renewal, and the 2021 would represent half a year of revenue loss if we weren't able to pass that one. So if you compare that to the forecasted expenses, and we don't follow this trend in actuality, but if we continue on the inflation forecasting trends, this is what we would look like. But from year to year, we're able to manage and budget and stay within our budget because we cannot, state law prevents us from operating in a cash deficit. So I don't want anybody to think I'm out here yelling, the sky is falling, but I'm just saying if we're continuing on the inflation path that we're on in our spending patterns, this is what our expense would look like. And so how does that compare to our revenues? So the blue line represents the blue revenue without renewals. The red line just above that at the top represents, this is our revenue line, assuming that we pass all of our renewals. And then the green line just above that is that expenditure forecasted flow. And so when it starts to separate itself is when we need to start making spending decisions about staying within our revenue budget. The bottom two lines represent, this is the impact of the cash with and without the renewals. So you can see the purple line is without the renewals. We would dive deeply without a renewal in 2020. And then if we were passing a renewal, we were able to defer that deficit into 2021. So while we're doing really well managing, we can't rest on our laurels, and we have to continue to keep performing to keep financial support going. So there is a rule in our forecast that says that we have to show at least cash at the end of each year of 2% of our prior year's revenues, or the team from ODE comes down and starts looking in your forecast, and they start putting us on plans for reduction. And so we've met those things. We've been able to maintain our cash balance for the current year and the next 2-year forecasted, so we're safe in that respect. So the last thing I wanted to say was that we are still committed to financial transparency. We were a transparent pioneer, so to speak, when we established our first public financial dashboard back in 2003. And instead of reinventing ours, we decided to jump on board with OpenGov a couple years ago. And we've gone beyond what most school districts are doing with the checkbook. We're going and putting all of our financial data out there in it, like kind of question and answer format. We had a team of people that helped us with the formatting and what would be most useful to our public. And we're just trying to mention it and communicate it as we stand in public so that there's more awareness out there that we are trying to be transparent. So this forecast, once adopted by the board, will be posted on the ODE website, listed at the bottom. It'll be posted on our website and on OpenGov. So we're putting it everywhere. And so I would encourage everybody to go check out OpenGov. I actually have a couple slides here that show you. If you just go to our main website, and oh, that's not looking good here. Over to the right, this must be a formatting thing. But if you go about the district and go down to financial information, it'll down on the left-hand side. Oops. Anyway, down on the left-hand side, there's a link for OpenGov. You just click on it, and you can either go right into the OpenGov website, or you can go scroll down further and do the question and answer thing. So there's a question like, what does the district spend their money on? Or where do they get their money from? If you click on it, up pops a chart and goes through basically what I just did for you. You can even drill down. It's drill down capabilities. Like one question is, how much does the district spend on athletics? And you can drill down and say, well, how much does you spend on boys versus girls, or football versus basketball? And that shows these nice little charts. Brittany Marks is in the audience. She's our Director of Financial Transparency, and she's done all this work, and she's fabulous. So, and she's done all the legwork on the forecast as well, because she's helping to do the analytics that we've been missing for years. And so that concludes my presentation. Can I answer any questions for you?
Yeah. Board members, do you have any questions or comments about the 5-year forecast? Ms. Bolton?
I was going to be good, but now.
Seriously, does anyone have any comments? Do you?
Yeah, I can. You know me too well. Just wanted to ask regarding just a few things. The capital money that we have, or money that we can spend on refurbishing or rebuilding or new building. Mm-hmm. How does that fit into what we have before us in this 5-year plan?
So we do. There are debt limitations, and we are at our debt limitation in terms of the money that we borrowed in order to do the $1 billion facility master plan that we continue to have these fabulous buildings out there. We did have some monies left over in that, thanks to our facilities department and chief operating officer, and we were able to use those monies to do the renovations we did for Vine Street and Spencer and North Fairmount, the LEAP building. However, there's not much left. So if we were having need of capital expenditures, what we would do is take advantage of what's called a COP, so the Certificate of Participation. It operates as a lease payment, and so you just have to make sure that your general fund has the ability to make those operating payments, and it does not go towards your debt limitation. And so we've worked with Brenda Weimer and David Conley to help us plan that out if we're need. So I did put an estimate in there in 2019 going forward for a estimate on a possible project that we might have moving forward, just so that we have a placeholder in the forecast.
And we have that placeholder, and what about the possibility, since time is of the essence, regarding the refurbishing and renovation of Old Clifton School? Where does that fit in this budget?
We'll have to have conversations about that, but we are aware that the ODE is starting their capital budget planning right now, and so we're hoping to jump on board with them as well.
Okay. And then just, if I could, the charter enrollment is going down. Does that mean then that we have a larger market share of the students or the families attending? Or is
Anecdotally,
it-
I would say yes, but our CIO is doing an enrollment presentation here in the next couple of weeks, and so that will become more apparent. But yes, we are regaining market share.
And I would only make one correction, because I know you didn't mean to say what one thing you said, which was when those lines start to separate, that's when we have to really watch our spending. Everybody in this room knows that you watch our spending about every second and minute.
Yes, I'm
So-
sorry. We don't do it just then. We do it, I do it every day. It's part of my life.
Thank
So,
you.
and I'm not always very popular when I have to say no, but it is what
Thank
you
you
pay
very-
me to do.
Great report, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else I can do?
Ms.
Any
Bates.
questions?
Yes, I have a comment and a question. First of all, the comment. Yesterday, we had an abbreviated presentation on the five-year forecast during our Finance Committee meeting. And we had a nice surprise. 2 members of our Audit Committee came to the meeting as well to observe and support, really. And afterwards, both of them came up to me and actually complimented the 3 of us, thought that the committee members worked very, very well together, but the administration as well, and how we really worked well as a team. And they were very, very impressed with our meeting and the way we, the respect we had for one another, the work that came out of the meeting, the comments, suggestions. So I wanted everybody to know that, that the people who are auditing us like the way our Finance Committee works, and especially the five-year forecast presentation, which was very helpful to them as well. One suggestion that they gave me was the OpenGov website. If we can put that on our letterhead, and if we have it on our website by, contact information, just places where the website for OpenGov is, can be available. So we're, people they don't really have to look for it, that, okay, here's the CPS website address, here's the OpenGov, et cetera. I have a question about the school-wide pool. With the exception of the 6 schools. In light of the implementation of our equity policy, how will equity be determined in the distribution of the school-wide pool funding? Because even though schools are Title I, we know that some schools have greater needs for resources than others.
Yeah, that's a great question. So currently, the pool is funded based on the rules behind the fund. For example, Title I has to be for economically disadvantaged children. And so there's bands. So the highest disadvantaged group of schools get a higher per pupil value than the next band versus the next band. I can't quote you the numbers right now. Title IIA is more of about class size reduction. So when we do budgeting and staffing, we do it based on forecasted students or projected students. And sometimes we'll create like a 2-3 classroom mix, and that's not sound academically. So we use the money to separate, hire an extra teacher so there'll be a second grade, a third grade. So it helps with that equity. The general fund is built based off of projections and all the staffing, student-based staffing. So if you remember a decade ago, we used to do student-based budgeting. It was kind of a challenge to try to get the revenue rates the same. So we converted to student-based staffing. And then every school is given a non-personnel per pupil value. And then the school decides how that money needs to be spent based on the needs of their students. So that's about as much as we can support, because what we don't do is do everything equal, because equal is not equitable, right? Mm-hmm. And so we rely on the schools to use the academic data to help in their other data. Some schools need more security because there are neighborhoods that are a little bit more challenging than other neighborhoods. Some use it for more reading paraprofessionals because they need help in reading. And so the schools really determine the needs of their building. And then we try to support that.
I need to go to Ms. Johnson.
Sure.
Yes, just a clarifying question on the line graph, general fund revenues, expenditures, and cash balance. The bottom line, not that one, the line, no, go back, yeah, that one, yes. The bottom line, the blue line, renewal 1, renewal 2, is that the same renewal levy, or are these two different?
These are the two. So the renewal number 1 is the one that we're asking for in November 6th or 7th, I forget the date now. That's the $51.5 million fixed sum levy. Renewal 2 is the $66 million fixed sum levy.
I got you. And so then going back to the top graph, that disparity between the green line and the blue represents revenue loss, which is huge. Just looking at the graph, it scares me, okay?
So in a normal revenue cycle, so you get even money every year, but you don't spend money evenly. So at the beginning of a revenue levy cycle, you tend to be cash rich, and then you cross over, so then you're starting to eat into that cash balance as the end of your levy cycle goes.
Okay.
So that's what that is,
Okay.
that crisscross.
Okay.
Good question, though. Thank you.
Ms. Bolton.
Yeah, just to follow up on what Vice President Bates mentioned, going way back in board history when we had member Michael Flannery, who was a major advocate, especially for our kids with special needs. And we had just done the pool piece. I think one of the interests, and I think it still is an interest of everyone's, is how can we be sure that the tracking in pool-wide is actually really specific to the needs of those kids. So I think that's something, if there's a way, and I know we've worked on that and whatever, but I think that it would be good for our special needs population and their families to be able to indeed say that we can track it and all that money that's supposed to be going for those needs is happening. And the other piece, it's fascinating how you asked about the pool and then the equity policy. Ideally or philosophically, you ought to be able to do things more equitably with a pool wide
Yes.
than an individual building.
Yes.
And it'd be great to kind of show how that's the case. Because it does get funny about when you just put all that money in one place and.
Right. So what happened was when a school principal had to deal with a general fund budget, a Title I budget, an IDEA B budget, and a Title IV budget, and there's restrictions on that spend. So several years ago with Title I, you could only have, that teacher could only serve Title I students and not school-wide needs. And so there would always be money left over on the table because there were so many restrictions on it. So when you commingle it, you put it towards the need. And to answer your question about compliance and monitoring, the schools fill out what's called a one plan. So, and that's based on the student's assessment, and they're reviewed when they're created, and they're reviewed as they spend it, so that they're being held accountable to serving the needs that are in that one plan. And it's part of their evaluations, I believe.
Thank you.
Now, bringing up Flannery, I was thinking about this morning because IDEA B, which is the fund that we use to help support our students with special needs, used to be in the pool. But compliance was a real challenge because it loses its identity. So it was really hard to ensure that IDEA B monies weren't being used on kids who didn't necessarily need it. So we pulled it back out of the pool while we perfect kind of our compliance. So.
I hope Mr. Flannery heard that.
Yeah.
Any other board members? Well, Jen, as usual, your presentation is simply awesome, and thanks for making it easily understood. I had some of the same questions related to capital and the school-wide pool, but I appreciate you fleshing that out.
Oh, sure.
I think that's important. I have gone to the website and I have gone through the financial transparency piece. I think it's very useful. And so I'd like to support the district in being transparent with finances. And I know that took a long time to kind of get there, so.
Yeah, so we're getting kind of good at it. In fact, we're actually looking and working with OpenGov on developing and trying to replace our budget development Excel spreadsheet system into something. And I told them that there's a huge market out there in the K-12 world.
Nice.
And we're going to be creating a revenue sharing experience as we're helping them to develop it. Brittany and Kelly have been instrumental in those meetings. And I would like to say that we're always open to ideas. So if there's data out there that there's a question that somebody wants answered and we don't have it there, just send us a question and we'll create it. Brittany's awesome at it. So
Excellent. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Superintendent Mitchell, do you have a report?
Just a very brief one. I just wanted to bring to the board's attention and everyone's attention that on October the 20th, we're going to have our Career Expo. Last year, we had 40 organizations and businesses represented. This year, we have 55. 900 11th graders will be attending, and this will be located at the Sharonville Convention Center. So we're very excited about that. And when we think about and talk about career readiness and the expo, want to also bring to your attention, it was remiss of me a couple meetings ago to point out the fact that the board did approve a college manager for the district, someone who really has a focus on making sure that our kids get into college and all of those I's are dotted and T's are crossed. In addition, when we think about our kids being ready for a life beyond CPS, we've done a bit of a pivot with our career-based learning manager position, and that position will now have a focus on employment. So it'll be career-based and employment.
Nice.
And so we'll be setting targets for those people in terms of the graduating class, the percentage of our kids who are accepted into a job and accepted into college. So I want to bring those two things to your attention. The last thing is that on October the 21st, here at the Education Center will be our first My Tomorrow Parent Conference. And this will be for parents to attend along with their high school students. So that's my report for today.
Thank you. That's fabulous because I had an inquiry about that, so that's good. Thank you. Are there any inquiries or updates? I do want to update the community related to our meeting next Monday, the 23rd. We will have a tribute to my dear friend, Chris Nelms, and I would urge the community to be a part of our presentation if at all possible. I'm also encouraging folks to do exactly what our superintendent just mentioned on the 21st, is to attend the parent conference. I think that's an amazing way to get our parents involved and our community involved as well. Are there any assignments? Ms. Bates?
This isn't an assignment, it's just, I wanted to let the board know that I will be traveling to Cleveland tomorrow through Saturday in my capacity as a representative to the Council of Great City Schools. And I'll be facilitating a session on Friday, and I'll be participating in the Board of Directors meeting on Saturday. So I should have more information for you after that meeting.
Are there any assignments? Having no other business, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Adjourn for lunch.
You know what, just soaking up the information, because this is my job. Yeah. You know, more I do, more I'm like, you all made it.
So, welcome. Our reporters, we had two here, but they've left, so they probably may not have any questions. I thought maybe they would want to interview you or talk to you, but it looks like they've left.
Think they'll happen Monday?
I'm sorry?
Will they come back Monday?